Hello class, welcome to our video reading review lecture of Act 3, Scene 2. Okay, so this is the deal with Hamlet. For me, Act 3, Scene 2, Act 3, Scene 3, and Act 3, Scene 4 are the turning points, right? Think about it. He needs proof, right? He's a critical thinker, like you and I. He's home from school in Wittenberg. We find out he's the end in Act 5. We find out he's 27. Um, so he's going to graduate school would be the equivalent. So when the ghost tells him what the ghost tells him, he says, I need proof. Now, whether or not you agree with his antic disposition and acting crazy, notwithstanding, he doesn't have many options. He can't just accuse the king of, uh, what the ghost told him. So he needs to find proof. Now remember, there's no police, there's no detectives, he can't comb the garden for DNA evidence. So what he tries to do is act crazy so that he can find information out. Now, earlier when we saw him dealing with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and dealing with Polonius, right? We noticed that his craziness, right, as Claudius says, there's a method to his, I'm sorry, as Polonius says, there's a method to his madness. He says how pregnant his replies are. He admits to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that he hasn't been feeling like himself lately, right? But he is able to get them to admit they were sent for. So he knows now he can't trust them. He also, right, I think we can all agree, based on his discussion with Polonius, does not trust Polonius either. And I think Hamlet is suspicious that Polonius is the reason why Ophelia will no longer see him or talk to him. So that brings us to Act 3, Scene 2. He needs his proof, and he gets his proof in Act 3, Scene 2. How? By using the theater. And this is symbolic and significant. Remember, people went to the theater back then to be entertained and to learn about life, just like we go and watch movies or TV shows or plays or what have you nowadays. You want to be entertained, but you also want to learn about life. You want to learn about what? How to deal properly with what? Love, with revenge, with justice. I mean, the criminal justice system is something that we're constantly reevaluating. And if you think about this play, the idea of capital punishment plays a very important role. Because if Claudius is guilty, the ghost tells him to kill him. Does Claudius deserve the death penalty? Something to think about. Um, and what is justice? I mean, is justice just a euphemism for revenge? Um, so that being said, Hamlet is going to use the theater, right, to find out about the human experience, to determine whether or not Claudius is guilty. And he enlists Horatio as an objective source to validate his conclusion. So, um, as let's kind of move forward with that. We see Hamlet's kind of flirting with Ophelia. He's being very brash, right? And I think that when people know they're right or think they're right, a lot of times they start acting very arrogantly and rather than being humble, right? Nobody likes somebody that rubs it in your face. Rather than being humble, we see here, this is the beginning of the change in Hamlet, because I think he's a logical, critical thinker in the first three acts up till Act 3, Scene 2, because he's saying, I need premises to support my inferences, right? However, once he gets his proof, we see he starts letting hubris overcome him. And if you look in the back of Reading and Writing about literature, there's a glossary of terms and they're listed alphabetically. And if you look up Hubris, you'll see that it's the tragic flaw of characters, arrogance. It's the opposite of humility, right? Um, Notice he has somewhat symbolic conversations with Ophelia in some ways, in that one could read them as being double entendres. And we see he's kind of arrogant with her around lines 100 to 105, right? My head upon your lap, I, my lord, do you think I meant country matters? I shall think nothing. That's a fair thought to lie between a maid's legs. Again, there's a lot of sexual talk here, and he's doing this in front of her father. He's doing this in front of Claudius. He's doing this in front of Gertrude. He's starting to get arrogant and brash. Nevertheless, right, um, as the conversation with Ophelia continues, around line 115, he says, "For look you how cheerfully my mother looks, and my father died within these 2 hours, and she has nay, 'tis twice 2 months, my lord." And he says, "So long? Oh, that's a long time, 2 months. Nay, then let the devil wear black, for I'll have a suit of sables." Oh, I might as well start wearing white and stop mourning because that's a really long time. So it's very interesting how even though he's putting on the antic disposition, there's also moments of clarity there. As Claudius says, there is a method to his madness. So, as we know, the play reenacts, right, a relationship between a king and a queen. And as the king is asking his player queen, the wife, if I die, you need to move on. You need to take another lover, right? You need to marry someone else. And she says, never, never, never. I would never do it. I would never do it. And if you look at lines 215, Hamlet says to his mother, "Madam, how like you this play?" And she says, "The lady protests too much, methinks." This is one of the more popular quotes from the play. "The lady protests too much, methinks." You ever have someone who overdoes it? Right? Just as understatement, saying less than what you mean, right, can be an effective way to emphasize things, overstatement can be an effective way to emphasize, but it could also backfire. And for her, what she's saying is she's no, right? And he says, "Oh, but she'll keep her word," right? She's saying, no, she's overdoing it. And essentially, right, what she's suggesting is that, I mean, what does the player queen say? Both here and hence pursue my lasting strife, if once a widow, ever I be wife. Right? I will never love another. I will never forsake you for another. And obviously, Gertrude. Again, there's different ways to look at Gertrude. Is she weak, like Hamlet thinks, and should she have refrained from entering into a relationship with Claudius, or was it a power move? Right? I mean, think about it. She becomes queen if she marries, or retains, excuse me. She becomes the queen of Claudius if she marries him. Whereas if Claudius doesn't become king and she doesn't marry him, Hamlet becomes king, and then his wife will be queen, right? So, or even if she's still the queen and his wife, but again, she'll lose a bit of power. Was it a power move? So I think that anyone who's quick to judge Gertrude, try to employ Rogerian strategy, in that although everyone else in the play seems to think it was too soon, why is there this double standard? Why does a woman have to mourn longer than a man per se? Why is it frailty? My name is woman. Thy name is woman, as Hamlet says. Why is he stereotyping all women as weak? Again, it kind of raises lots of questions about these double standards in society. So, uh, Claudius afterwards is clearly upset by it. He rises. Hamlet talks to Horatio. Horatio confirms um, what he saw. Um, and we see that Hamlet's arrogance really starts to manifest itself when he's talking with Horatio. He's saying, "Oh my gosh, wasn't what right? Oh, good Horatio, I'll take the ghost's word for 1,000 pounds. Didst perceive?" Lines 269. Again, he's saying, "I'd bet 1,000 pounds that what the ghost said is true." Now, again, he has his proof, but to say, "I'd bet 1,000 pounds," he's essentially doing what? Gambling, right? And isn't gambling an act of arrogance to say that you could predict the future? I don't know. It's also interesting. It kind of reminds me of a Jeopardy answer. I'll take the ghost's word for 1,000 pounds, right? On Jeopardy, they say, "I'll take blank for blank." I wonder if Jeopardy got its format from Hamlet. Wouldn't be surprised. So, um, again, we see that he's very confident. He's very proud of himself. Is he too proud? Is he too arrogant? Well, remember when Rosencrantz and Guildenstern confront him after. If you skip all the way down to lines 362, he says to them, "Sblood, do you think I am easier to be played on than a pipe? Call me what instrument you will, though you can fret me, yet you cannot play upon me." He's basically saying, "I will not be lied to again. I will not be used to anymore." He's confronting people, and then right. Polonius comes in, so he confronts Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. There's no pretending to be crazy. He's very, very vocal. Polonius comes in, right? And he says, your mom wants to see you. And he says, tell her I'll be there in a minute, by and by, right? And Polonius says, say, I will. And he says, by and by is easily said. Again, we see he's not as respectful as he was to Polonius earlier. And then we have his soliloquy to end Act 3, Scene 2. And this speaks for itself. Now that he has his proof, he tells us he's ready to do the deed. But is he? 'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now I could drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the bitter day would quake to look on. Soft now to my mother. O heart, lose not thy nature. Let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. My tongue and soul in this be hypocrites. How in my words somever she be shent, to give them seals, never my soul consent. So that moment of omniscience lets us know what his next plan is. He's going to talk to his mom, but he's not going to physically do anything that would violate what the ghost told him to do. But he says, I'm ready to drink hot blood. I'm ready to do the bitter business that the bitter day would quake to look on, right? Because again, this idea that under the cover of the night you can get away with things that you wouldn't be able to get away with in the day. More to come as we move on to Act 3, Scene 3, which to me is the most important moment in the play. Stay tuned.